Alright guys, so I've switched the audio back to my headset because I think the quality is better than using a hands-free. So we started printing out the wing sections now. These come in pairs. I'm using the wham bam plate. However, I have seen a little bit of warping down the bottom here. Negligible. So I think I'm going to switch back to the Enderbill plate. It's just these are tricky, these sections. They've got very thin wall, and then you've got a very thin section here, so it's not massive, but definitely pulled up a bit. So what have I been doing in addition to the wing sections? Well, I've been having a little. This is Sunday. The weather's kind of about to rain. Thought why not just knock out a bush? And it's pretty straightforward. Same kind of thing. It's really just two cylinders. So if we just replay this, you can see it's just two cylinders with a shell in the first cylinder, and there's a nice inspect feature here, so you can use measure, and you can select your points. So I guess I want this outer point, and then this point over here. So it shows me. Actually, I think it's measuring chamfers there. So I think because I've put a chamfer on, it's harder for it to measure. Let's see if I can just say take inspect measure. Can I take that outer wall there? Probably not. Yeah. Okay, let's just bring up the measure window. Right. Radius. There you go. It is correct. It is correct. So it has measured the diameter of 8 millimeters. So I want this to be a bush that goes into a hole that's 8 millimeters in diameter in the hole. And the outer frame that the hole sits on is about 13 millimeters. In fact, let's try that again. So I'll say inspect, measure. Yeah, okay, so it latches on at that point. This is pretty cool. Latches on at that point. Maybe not. Let's see if I can get it in the right place. Because I'm in 3D mode at the moment. So I'm trying to get it to go across these 2 points. I'll figure it out. Anyway, it is 13 millimeters. I know because when I set it up, it was 13 millimeters. And I left a hole in the middle, and the reason I left a hole in the middle is because I want the PLA to pass through there. So what I've got at the moment is I've got a little arm that sits on my ender, Creality ender. It just sort of plugs in on the end of on the frame really, and it guides the PLA material through. But what I've noticed recently is it's worn now, being PLA, and it's starting to snag. So the extruder itself is jabbering. Jabbering, you can just hear it going clunk, clunk every so often. And you can brush out with a fine brush because you do get a little bit of PLA getting into the sort of gear mechanism, or the knurled section, if you like, the tooth section of the extruder. And you'd only just flick it out with a small brush until it's all come out and blow it away. But I was wondering, well, why is it snagging, especially on taller pieces where it's printing out larger volume? So I figured out that it must be snagging, so I took away the arm, and sure enough, it was definitely snagging. Although, okay, well, what I need to do then is knock a little bush up to go into the arm, and then put a little bit of tubing in there that will sit inside here. So a little bit of the similar type of tubing that you use for the Bowden, which is very low resistance. So that's what I've just created. I thought I'd create this little. I can rewind this, by the way, over to here. But you can just play it. So let's say it's just two cylinders, one top, one bottom, and then you just remove the middle bit. Once you've got your sort of two cylinders, you just select down in the hole there and delete it. Obviously, you create your first cylinder, set your height and everything what you want this height to be, um, what you want the width to be, um, and then you create a shell. Obviously, same kind of idea. You come to modify. Once you've selected the object, you come to modify, and you would say shell it, and that would then choose the diameter, choose how much you want to reduce the or have the shell thickness by, and then a second cylinder, and then delete the middle bit, the bit out of the middle where the hole's going to be. So if I free orbit it around, you can see it's definitely got the bit out of the bottom. I quite like this free orbit because you can then get around. There's a nice feature as well where you can either press escape. You can either select the entire object by dragging around it, so you might want to resize it or do something with it. Or you can choose the individual faces that make up the object. So you can hold the control key down and select those until you have all of the relevant bits of the object. Then you can free orbit around. So you'll need to select, if you want to select everything, you need to select, hold the control key, that face, roll it around, press escape, select that face, probably select the internal face, same as dragging all around it really, but it just goes to show that you can, select individual faces that you want to make modifications on. I'd have to select the chamfer as well, but press escape, and it's back to where it was. So these tools become a little bit more, self-explanatory. The look at, you can look at different elements if you want. You can pan, move it around a bit. You can zoom in a bit, zoom into particular sections you want to go into. And of course you can use this home button, or you can just rotate faces by picking an edge, or top if you want to look top, or home, get back into 3D. So you can kind of use this sort of X, Y, Z axis, and I think there's different views you can select under here as well, which I haven't played too much with these, but yeah. So it's starting to make a little bit more sense to me how you would use this. I wouldn't call it the most intuitive, but once you understand, well, certainly more intuitive than other CAD/CAM software I've seen. Some is easier than other. This is a little bit more engineering focus. You can insert objects via a picture if you want, or a decal or a canvas. There's various other things you can pull in or insert meshes. So you can insert something and then draw around a picture, for example. Initially, when we were drawing an aerofoil, we just dropped a picture in and then drew a silhouette around the aerofoil. But then, of course, we discovered, my son and I discovered there were these really cool add-ins, and you can get them via the App Store. And currently I've got one which I've been using called the airfoil data from to spline. So you can take the outline of an airfoil, and you can turn that into a spline and then use that to extrude and turn it into a wing. So some quite useful, yeah, it's starting to make a little bit more sense, this product, to me. I'm not, a CAD/CAM person, but I'm gradually learning some of the basics. So I've created my bush, and then I want to go and save that. Well, what you need to do is you need to come back here and save it, give it a name. We'll just call it bush, and save it. And then once you've done that, you can export it, and then choose what you want to export it into. Scroll to the bottom, in my case, STL file. It's going to be bush version 1, really. And then export it, and then it will go online, and it will convert that into an STL file, which I can now also import into Cura or Prusa, Slicer, or whatever slice you prefer. Yeah, so again, go and print it off. It's very satisfying, I have to admit, being able to design something from scratch in a CAD program and then produce it and then see it actually being printed out in front of your eyes. And even just printing out a little rubber band that I did yesterday using TPU, it was a very simple exercise in some ways, but it's quite rewarding when you see something which you designed in a CAD program actually being vertically and horizontally, three axis really, produced. And then it turns into a product, something that you engineered. So the more you get into this game, I think you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes out of engineering stuff. So this is the wing, uh, the first wing section, and I think I mentioned to you already in this wing in the previous video. Let me go and grab a copy of the section. So it's under Cura, it's under their files, and I went and got big wing. Big wing one. Just maximize it up a little bit. Scroll back. Yeah, so that's what I'm printing at the moment. As I said, what's really happening is you get a little bit of warping down there. That's why these pads are here. But it really also comes down to lots of things: temperatures, the build plate material itself, the PLA, how fast you're printing, other factors. And I'll need to. I think I'm definitely going to take off the Wham Bam seems to be quite good for certain things, but on these thin sections, it's really tough to get it to print without warping. A little tiny amount of warping, but it's irritating. You get a little bit of warping. It just seems that it's problematic where you've got very thin sections and very tall sections in the PLA itself because of the heat is being applied further and further up. And of course, it's higher temperature up here than it is down there. It's causing this pulling effect right in these critical sections. I'll accept it on this particular print, but for the next one, I'm going to switch back to the Ender build plate, which is much grippier. It's got a fabric surface to it in a way, a kind of a gritty kind of surface, whereas the Wham Bam, although I find it an excellent build plate for most things, um, very large objects, definitely I'm seeing a little bit of warping. And it may just mean that I need to experiment more with temperatures. Maybe this needs to be closer to 70, or inversely, it needs to be cooler, but I suspect it needs to be warmer. Although if it is cooler, then in theory, if it's cooler, it should be, it's difficult to know what the Goldilocks spot is for keeping the heat at the right level, enough to make it stick, but not enough to let the pliancy of the material pull up as it pulls upwards. So I will experiment some more with it. But yeah, it takes a lot of patience, I think you'll find, but it's worthwhile over time. So that's where I'm at the moment, and I'll keep in touch and let you know what else I'm doing.